to Success. I am your host, Claire.
And I'm Heather.
And today we're really excited to have a special guest with us, and that is Sandro, who will be talking with us about integrity, psychology, and I'm pretty sure the power of the brain from what we've discussed. So Sandro, welcome. Thank you again for being here.
Thank you also very much.
Yeah, so could you just tell us a little bit about yourself, like give us your elevator speech, and we'd like to know a little bit more.
Yeah, of course. So it's almost a question of where to begin.
True, fair.
My name is Sandro Bilobrk. You roll the R at the end, but I'm very used to people just call me Bilobrk.
Yeah, well, I'm not gonna lie. I did tell him that I was absolutely going to butcher his last name, so if he wouldn't mind introducing himself.
But it's fine. It sounds it almost sounds more professional. No, but the name originally comes from it's of Slavic descent. I'm Bosnian, born in Bosnia. Right around the time where it was I guess a bit more politically difficult in the situation, but I won't necessarily go into that.
Right, fair.
Yeah. So at the later point, I've or my parents rather, who are also here with me at the moment. They're sitting here, not disturbing at all. Conversation. They just
awesome.
barged in. Yeah. No, it's awesome.
For those of you that weren't able to see, his parents did walk in through the background, but I barely noticed. I think, yeah.
Yeah, no, it's a bit more cozy. It's also very fitting.
Perfect timing. I mean, if we're talking about timing, it was perfect timing because you were talking about where you're from. So it actually worked out really well. I was like, part of me thought, did he plan that?
Yeah, the timing's a thing. Yeah, no, but it does work perfectly because they're a huge part of me also being part of this podcast at the moment, because they're when there was that difficulties, let's say, during the country, they did move over to Germany, where I'm currently residing, and where
Awesome.
I grew up in, basically went to school, which was, of course, a huge change for them. It was a huge difficulty, let's say. I, of course, only very passively taking notice of that during my youth. But through that struggle, I got to experience basically let's say the most positive side of life always. So it was a very positive childhood, positive upbringing. I was very enclosed, let's say. So it took a few years. There for me to learn also about, let's say, the hardships that are also accompanied with it, which things like stress, depression, mental anxiety, and all of those things.
Resilience.
Resilience, of course. So there's it's of course a spectrum, right? There's both sides of it, and all of those things I couldn't have dealt with as I would say professionally as I do nowadays. If it weren't for my parents. So yeah. They're sitting here. They don't speak English, so they don't understand the word. But
what a unique situation that you get to be in right now. That's great.
Yeah, for sure. It was, like I said, it was a very spontaneous occasion. Okay. But so due to that, the first time that I really got out of the house, let's say, I went to the Netherlands to study psychology. I really wanted to be on my own, dependent, learn to stand on my own feet, basically. And that's the first time that I really got into contact with psychology, learning the ropes, the thematics, the ins and the outs, also at the same time, how to make a living for myself. And I basically immediately fell in love with it because due to me being a bit more sheltered, I was also very invested in the more philosophical topics of how does the brain work ever since the youth. So it really is like a passion of me. Yeah. Understanding it. To be honest, from my side, I was never really a huge fan of the research aspect of psychology, but I really loved just the theme of it, just like the idea of everything that we experience on a day-to-day basis gets processed through the brain, and it basically makes up the thing that we call consciousness, and all of those different things. So like the mental anxiety, the anguish, it's a big word that I mentioned earlier, but also the flip side, the happiness, the nice moments. Today, for example, is a very beautiful day. It's the 1st of May. It's very sunny here in Germany. And just experiencing that, the dopamine, the serotonin,
the joy,
it's all in there. And so, I've fell in love with the idea. I was basically in a clutch between going more into the topic of neuroscience and really studying the brain, but I eventually decided against it because for me it was a bit too granular of a work.
Yep.
So I wanted to go more into the field of coaching and understanding how do humans function at a bigger scale, so organizations, and how also we can use the knowledge of the mind and how we process things to actively make the most out of life, to seek for the positive psychology by Martin Seligman, of course, a huge inspiration there for me.
Yeah,
for sure. And so I've after completing my bachelor and my master of science, the master being more specifically in work, organization, health psychology, I was learning the ropes more, working in organizations within the HR field. So not quite psychology, but of course also still working with humans at some bigger companies, which was definitely tough. Speaking of mental stress.
Not easy, give you that.
Yeah. But after a couple of years, I've decided I want to go on my own and use what I've learned both on the theoretical front as well as on the practical front to support people get the most of their own life and to view things more positively and to let's say help where I can, because I think there's a lot of places where psychology currently is a bit struggling.
Stigmatized. Yeah,
stigmatized for sure.
Yeah.
So these are definitely areas where I think that we all can do great work, and so that's what I'm aiming for. Yeah,
that is awesome. And so thank you again. That's quite the rich history to be able to come up through, and obviously self-driven path down this road. So that's fantastic. Well,
it really is.
Yeah.
Thank you very
much.
And
to be able to go, I know that Europe is so different than the US, but to be able to go to Netherlands to study, like that just like brings so much joy to my heart. Like I'm like, oh, wouldn't that have been amazing? But
for sure.
They've got the lock on it.
You know, the Netherlands has a place in my heart. I'm half Dutch. So my dad was.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I just, when you said that, my heart I had a little flutter.
Do you speak? Do you speak any other languages, Heather? No, I don't know this about you.
No, okay. I don't. But I have a lot of family out there. So
I only speak in Beetje. In Beetje, that's what they.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I can go to. I can basically go to the supermarket and buy something, and I can get away without anybody noticing that I don't speak the language at all. So.
Oh, wow. Oh, my gosh.
Well, nobody really does speak Dutch. Dutch is a very, it's almost a lost language, you know, like not very many people speak it. Everybody speaks English.
Yeah, outside of.
And in fact, when my dad was going to school, he had to learn 3 other languages. So he learned, obviously Dutch, English, German, and Russian.
Oh, really? Russian? That's such a strange one. Yeah. Well, it's actually not a strange one. It's actually very important, I guess, to know different languages from all across the world.
Exactly, but it was interesting how in their schooling that was part of their schooling is learning multiple languages, not just. I mean, here in America, you learn you have to generally learn one, right? But nobody
you
really
learn it very poorly. Let's be honest.
What?
You learn it very poorly.
Well, you know what is wild about it is I just think some people are linguistics, because my son learned Spanish fluently. Now he speaks Portuguese and he's learning Russian as well on his mission.
Well, it's an interesting thing. It's an interesting thing, definitely. And I'm also very happy that of course, there's a lot of other frameworks about how language influences our mind and the way we think.
Yes.
Everybody who, like me, for example, I grew up bilingually, so of course I have a, let's say, different personality when I speak my native language of Croatian, Bosnian than I do when I speak German or English, for instance.
Mm-hmm.
So my English, my English, for example, very much influenced by the content that I perceived through YouTube and all of the learnings. Of course, I studied in the Netherlands, but it was in English, so that's why I also mostly the content that I produce, for example, on Instagram or on LinkedIn, is also mostly in English because it fits better to, let's say, the way
exposure.
I've adapted, and the way that I've learned psychology.
Well, I think also learning different languages actually helps you understand people more, like going back to like the psychology, because one thing my son talks about a lot is even just like how to call yourself. Like, so like in English, you say, my name is. In Spanish, you say, I call myself.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting. And in I can't remember what it is in Russian, but it's totally different. And in Portuguese, it's different as well. And so he was saying so it's interesting how like the psychology of how you even introduce yourself is different in every language. And it really gives you a different perspective of that society. And, you know, like in America, we're like, my name is, like, I'm the best.
And again,
I don't know.
Again, psychology, that's the egocentric, the individualism, right?
Exactly. Just in the one little spot of how you introduce yourself. And so I find language is very interesting, and there's a lot to learn about it and to understand about different cultures just in how they like speak and how they use
psychology is everywhere. It's like psychology.
So we've gone
everywhere.
down a path. I'm going to bring us right back around just real quick. So Sandro, can you tell us a little bit about like what specific direction are you headed in right now? What is your main goal? What is your passion?
So my main goal and the main passion that I am is it's very adaptive to, I would say, the current, let's say, the current passion that I want to follow. So I have a long-term goal, which is obviously to help as best as I can and to establish let's say, a more organizational approach to psychology, a way that we perceive it and don't just stigmatize it, as you said it in the beginning. To think about psychology as this this idea of just the old psychotherapist sitting on a chair and listening to what somebody is saying, but that is actually everywhere, and that is actually also absolutely in the way that we talk to each other and that we communicate and that we think, also just by the way we interact. So what I'm doing right now is I'm a psychological advisor and business coach. So I use the knowledge that I've gained from companies and organizations to help people become and improve their leadership qualities, for example, to help the team dynamics, to improve also and all of it is really with the main goal of improving mental resilience. Because I do believe that in even the toughest situations that some people may find themselves in through different circumstances, there's a way to overcome that by your perspective and by the way that you look at the world and interact also with different people, right?
That's really interesting. So are you saying that what you're doing is training people to be more resilient within the workplace?
Well, that's the main that's the main thing that I'm currently working for. Is I'm helping leaders develop their leadership skills and also their just the empathy and to use the psychological toolbox, let's say, because it really is like the knowledge of how your brain works and operates. Again, for example, there's a lot of people, not just the youth, but also older people, leaders who are, let's say, very addicted. I didn't want to use the word, but addicted to their phone, which I think we all are or were at some point. And this is just the dopamine. Yeah. Same here. I cannot and that is just the dopamine, right? Like that is just the dopamine and the exposure and also the habituation to the environment. So of course it doesn't mean that you're not human and you can just turn it off, but just knowing how your brain operates can give you, let's say, the ability to use direction in how you, for example, lessen the usage of the smartphone. It's a very applicable example, but knowing these toolboxes and knowing how, for example, your interaction with the environment shapes this environment and shapes in turn also you through the reaction, that is a helpful skill and a trait for any leader to have, for any leader. And and that's why I say at the moment I'm helping organizations, I'm helping people that work in, let's say, startups, or also want to build and develop their own team. But to a certain extent, we all need to be a leader at some point, right? Whether it be in the family or in the friend group or just
in anything in life.
Anything in life, right? And so this is the current step, and in the later step we will see. But I just want to embrace the idea of the power that we have, right, through our brain and through the mind. It's beautiful, I think. Yeah,
absolutely. I find it it is absolutely everywhere, kind of like what you said. But do you find, similar to what I think Heather and I have talked about a couple of times, do you find that the resiliency is increasing or decreasing as we bring in different generations into the workforce? Or increased technology, I should say, because it's almost one and the same.
Well, that's a very interesting standpoint, because I do believe that it's all in all, it's decreasing for sure.
Okay. Yeah. Do you mind saying more about that?
Yeah, it depends. It depends really on the group of people that you're focusing on. From my experience, or from the way that I've seen certain groups of people, let's say it's decreasing in the sense that the smartphone and social media gives everybody an escapist route that you can take in, right? So if you're not satisfied with your job or your environment, instead of actively doing something about it or persisting, until, let's say, the next opportunity arises, some people can tend to try to escape from this more easily through the use of the smartphone and through social media. So while I do believe that this is not necessarily universal, of course, there's also other applications, and learning how to resist the temptation in itself can also be a very helpful thing in increasing resilience. But for that, you, of course, need to know how to navigate it. So I would say the effect that it's having is overall decreasing.
That's interesting. And Heather, like, we've kind of talked about it, and you've got little ones. I would 100% agree that based on what you said, what I heard, just let's make sure, we have reduced coping mechanisms and coping skills with the increase of technology. Is that accurate?
You mean
we've reduced coping skills with the increase of technology?
I agree. Like I think part of the magic of being a child is being bored, and that's where all this creativity
and self-soothe. Yeah.
No,
I see what you're saying. Yeah.
I think this is where you were going, Claire. But maybe not. So when my kids say that they're bored, I'm like, that's amazing. This is a great opportunity for you. This is where it's where all of the creativity and ingenuity and
100%.
innovation
happens. Exactly. Thank you. And without being bored, which we hardly get the opportunity to be bored because we're always like on our phone. I mean, I find myself doing
totally true.
Like if I'm waiting for someone at a restaurant, instead of just waiting there, I'm like on my phone so that I'm not uncomfortable at all.
Or have you ever been watching something on TV and still been on your phone? As if we didn't have enough entertainment directly in front of us. This is what we're doing to, like, because of that addiction, as Sandro said. Like, it is true.
And exactly. And so I do think that there is there is something nice about learning how to communicate. I know for my children, because they don't have electronics as young kids, that they can hold conversations with adults, and it's made them stand out in such a way that people are like, oh my gosh, your child speaks, you know? And I always think it's funny because I'm like, I don't know. That's just how it is. But I think a lot of it comes from the fact that they're not on their phone at a dinner table. Like we put our phones away, and, you know, we have conversations and, you know, things like that. But I think it's much easier just to hand someone an electronic device, especially a child.
Yeah. Well, and bring that into the workplace. We just put people like in front of a computer, or we put, instead of.
Exactly. And
I mean, yeah, go ahead, Sandro.
Yeah. And that's why, and I 100% agree. And that's beautiful that it is this way, because it also shows that there's things like these bring value, right? Like having traditions like don't be on your phone during the dinner table. It it directs the focus to where it should be, I think. And one of the reasons why I was a bit let's say confused when you asked the question about the coping mechanisms was because I was like, well, but the phone is kind of like a coping mechanism. But you're 100% correct. I misunderstood the question. It's about that instead of escaping onto whatever electronic device is nearest, people are less so capable to actually cope themselves and to understand that, for example, being bored is actually a perfectly fine thing. I believe it was, well, multiple people have said it, among others, Alan Watts, for example, talked about how boredom is just a state of being alive, because you're actually not taking something in or giving something from you, but you're actually just being in the present moment. So
I love that.
Yeah, you're alive, and that's awesome. It's great to be bored, because you only live once, right? So
yes. Yeah. Oh gosh, we're gonna YOLO this. Yes.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah.
Yeah, but I do think that that's interesting in the workplace. The thought of, because even on your computer, you have like your messaging and your emails and all these like pop-ups that are coming up all the time. And a lot of times you're on a Zoom or you're doing like 5 things at once, and it's mentally exhausting.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And that's this is where the work-life balance comes in, but also the perspective taking. So work-life balance, of course, everybody knows it, but at the same time, how can you really implement it in a way that's fair and fair to yourself and also to your family if you do have these responsibilities outside of work, right? Plus, and this is one thing again which my parents have always said, is that which has really motivated me, is that you don't live to work, you work so that you can live, right? So it's in itself, to me, a very strange idea to even have a work-life balance, because that in itself suggests that most of the time, like 2/3 of your day is apparently not life, right? Because it's just work. It's not that. So part of it is the perspective taking of the way you view it and the way you approach your work and your life. But a part of it is also being able to have this mental resilience and the coping mechanism, and also the ability to distinguish when, okay, even though I have a perfectly fine perspective and a perfectly fine mindset, this environment might not just be for me or might not be healthy to myself. And so these people can then, through the right psychological perspective, take the route to find a better environment or improve on themselves, so they can find a better job. It's oftentimes a process. It doesn't happen overnight, but there's a sense of being able to cope in the moment while also understanding that there's something on the horizon which is shining and is good. You don't just need to accept that if you're not happy with a situation, that you need to stay in the situation, right? So
excellent. Okay, so as we wrap this up, was something I would love to ask you, and I'm sure everybody would love to hear about, is in your experience and the things that you've gone through, what would you suggest is the first best step for somebody to create a higher resilience for themselves? If you were coaching, say you were coaching me and it was my first time, what would you say is my first step to do?
I would say the first step is always, and it's almost always awareness. So being aware of the moment, that this kind of connects also back to the aspect of boredom or being alive, being in the moment, is to understand your current situation, of course not perfectly, but to the best of your abilities. This can be achieved, well, through a coach, but also through mindfulness, through the meditation, any way which can help you specifically be aware of what is the current situation. So what am I happy about? What does make me happy about being alive? But also what is something that I want to change? And if you understand what you need to change, then you can formulate goals. And then to achieve these goals, you can work on having your mental resilience or improving your mental resilience. So it always does start with a sense of awareness. So being aware of the present moment and what you need to work on to get to the desired state.
Awesome. Okay. Well, thank you again, Sandro, for being here. Your story is phenomenal. I really appreciated it.
Thank you very much.
I would say to anybody out there, if you are looking for somebody to help coach you, guide you to be a better leader, we're never done learning. So please, please, please reach out to people like Sandro, even Heather, and see where you can really elevate yourself to, because without people like Sandro, I don't know where we would be in business. I think it would go down a really poor path. So, Heather, before we head out, any last words that you would like to put out there?
No, you wrapped it up perfectly. Nailed it.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you again, everybody. And Sandro, can you just let everybody know where they could find you online real quick? And we'll put that into the show notes.
Thank you very much. Well, first of all, thank you also very much for this podcast and the show. It was a great pleasure to talk with you and to be able to share my story. You can find me all on LinkedIn. The name is Sandro Bilobrk. So I'm sure it will be somewhere.
It will. We'll have it all over. Yeah.
The Instagram will be from coach and then my name. So fromcoach.sandrobilobrk. And and then I also have a website which is called From Coach. So fromcoach.com. So these are the three.
Fromcoach.com.
Yeah, exactly.
Perfect. So you can find him on LinkedIn, Instagram, and on his own website. So if you guys have any questions, please see any of those options. We'll have it also in the show notes, and we'll see you again next week.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks again. Again, Sandro, thank you.
Thank you very much.